that success looks like stairs. It doesn't look like a straight line up. And there is going to be sometimes a flat line, during that time where you're training and you're pouring into that person, and you're really teaching them to think like you think, right? So Ben is really good. And I think this is also good for us leaders to know. He's just good at models and frameworks. And that's how I think now. I think in terms of models and frameworks. And so if we're talking about leadership, like right now, I'm going to the leadership pyramid is what I think about. So lead yourself first, then lead others to lead others, and then you attract leaders. So, teach your people your frameworks of thinking. Think about how you can take how you think and what is your decision matrix? How do you make decisions? What are your rules of engagement for talking with clients? What are your rules? What are your deeply held beliefs? I call them DHBs of leadership, right? Write them down. Start just having a notepad. Don't be arbitrary, like framework who you are and how you think, and teach your people that.
Welcome to the Cheplak Live podcast, where I sit down with proven and tested leaders who take you behind the curtain of their business so you can avoid the mistakes that we've made, but you can also find the shortcuts from them. And I have a special friend with me today who is doing really, really big things. Vija, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, John.
So let's go in real quickly. Give us the backfill, okay, of where you started in the business, where you've evolved through the years, and then take us to current space and time of where you're sitting and what you're doing in probably one of the biggest and a very critical laboratory that you're doing working every single day, and we'll dig in there. So let it rip.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always for me, the hardest part talking about myself. So we'll get this over with, so that everybody knows the
asking you questions about yourself.
No, it's fine. But I think I have been in most every role, John, in real estate. I'm a second generation realtor. My dad actually created one of the first, what we would call builder services real estate companies in the nation, and has been kind of a guru of the Seattle real estate scene. It's interesting because a lot of us talk about building businesses that, with a family legacy that we can sell or that can go on. My brother bought that business from my dad, and it's still a $350 to $450 million volume real estate team and business. So it's still massively thriving. My dad's still in his 80s, toddles in the office every day. It's the joy of my week when he's in there, and, he's still doing land deals. So I am truly a second generation realtor, and have probably been doing this since I was 10, right? But when I first got into real estate, like probably everybody listening, I was an individual agent at the time. Well, you would know, John, I was with John L. Scott Real Estate, but a lot of people wouldn't, yeah.
I know.
It's a wonderful firm. It's a low, strong regional independent in the Pacific Northwest. But it's really there for solo agents, right? And, it's a wonderful leadership, wonderful people. And ended up kind of my world changed, I would say, when I was 42 years old, which is, I only say that because I think it's kind of late. I had 3 kids, kind of spent my 30s being your neighborhood realtor, right? John L. Scott, volunteering at school, on Fridays. And I was 42 and the market it had just tanked. Maybe I was 41, but it was like 20, I don't know, 2011, 2010, maybe I was 40, whatever I was. And I moved over to Keller Williams. And I only say that because I had never even been to a national real estate event before, right? Like I just didn't know anything. Yeah. And I just remember sitting in the audience of my first family reunion, and I didn't know anyone. So I was just sitting by myself in the audience, and I tapped the person next to me. I'm like, I'm sorry, did they just say they sold 500 homes in 1 year? Because I'm not, how can you do that? And this person's like, who are you? But my mind was blown, and that was it. I was ignited. I was like, what? Like Teams? What is this? And I just started traveling. I just started getting on planes. I didn't have a lot of money back then because of the downturn, frankly. And I was just using points, using hotel loyalties. I was just going to all these classes. Like, what do I have to learn to start this team thing? Well, I got to learn how to hire people. I need to learn, all the things that I had to figure out. I started traveling, and I have not stopped. And it's interesting because all of that time I met people like Veronica Figueroa. I met people like I'm there's so many other people, but so many people that I saw at the Maverick event
Mm.
that, we go
That
way
was like a
back to that.
reunion almost,
It
wasn't
was
that
like a
weird?
reunion. It was so great because, back then we were all just purely soaking in everything we could soak
Yeah.
in. It was really the pioneer days of growing teams and everything. So, that first year I did like 9 million volume, and you have to double everything now because that was so long ago. It was at 20, I don't know, I think it was 2011 or 2012. I did like 9 million volume. And then I
It's
started
huge.
going to back then, 18 million. But I go to all these classes, and then 1 year later I do 25 million, which is kind of like going from 15 million to 50 million in a year, right? And then I go to 25 million, then 36 million, 48 million, 70 million, which in today's dollars, if I just take those units, would be about $125 million team, which isn't the biggest team in the world, but it was a very fast, like I did that in 4 years only because I was just in these rooms. And we were all figuring it out in these rooms, and to be big in these rooms, 70 million was really massive back then. Now it's like a month for some of our friends. But that's really how I grew up and became, my world became real estate teams, right? At a certain point, it was 2018. I started feeling a call. I actually think I started feeling the call much before that, which kind of does, get us into that's a whole topic, women in leadership. I think we ignore calls and we don't quite know how to raise our hands sometimes. And I think I was guilty of that in retrospect because I felt a strong pull towards um, corporate leadership. Like I was like, I really think I'd be good at running offices and being in a having influence over more people and having a different lanes that I run in. When you run a real estate team, you're in 17.5 lanes every day. And, I began to think, I think if I could just stay in 3 or 4 lanes and really, really stay in growth mode and, not spend my days on cash flow management and, all of the things that it takes to run a team. I actually think I'm going to be more fulfilled and I'm going to be able to contribute more to my industry and to whatever company I'm working for. So I talked to a lot of people at that point, and I started coaching with an incredible person. His name's John Cheplak. Just incredible. One of the best coaches I have ever had. And
Hmm.
because I was really deeply talking to Ben Kinney at that point, who was at the time he'd owned my franchise that I was my Keller Williams franchise. But after 6 months of life contemplation, I really sunsetted the team. No other way to say it. I just kind of said, hey, everybody, go find other homes. And I took over his 6 Keller Williams franchises. That's what he had at the time. There was about 1,200 agents, 1,250 agents. And then our coaching switch, John, if you recall, kind of switched from Via crying a lot and making life decisions and being a little bit of a mess to, um, recruiting, right? You taught me how to be a frontline recruiter, which we always have to go frontline first. I'd say we always, I believe in going frontline first and being a player coach to a certain degree. Then we have to learn how to lead leaders and train others how to be frontline, and then ultimately have them train others to be frontline, right? So you taught me all that. This role was really similar to the one you had at Prudential. And so I took over as director of growth for Ben Kinney Brokerages in September of 2018. Within a year and a half, we were I'd have to look at my numbers, you know, 70, 75 gross recruits a month. We were a machine. It was stellar. We had brought 2 acquisitions. I kind of helped us through my first 2 acquisitions. And so we ended up at the peak with 8 franchises with a sort of a 9th quasi franchise, and almost 1,800 agents in a period of about 3 years. So it was really fast, good growth again. And I learned a lot about running brokerages. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I learned through that process, John, how to really understand financials. I ended up taking a Harvard Business School financial accounting course online, because I was just so weak in that area. And now I love that. I love the financials, but it took me a while to get there. It wasn't a natural thing. And, I learned so much during that time. And at a certain point, which I'm happy to dive into or not, but at a certain point, I decided that place was where I wanted to go. So Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez had found a place.
Yeah, talk
Frankly,
about that in the parallel,
yeah,
because I
yeah.
want to go there. I want to go there because there's a lot of reasons, ladies and gentlemen, as you're watching this and hearing this, there's a lot of things. This is Eva's Eva Via. I've got Eva Via. I was just talking. Via is accomplished. She is a powerhouse lady leader. You're already hearing what I just loved and picked up was her thing of, oh, she went and focused on her weaknesses and said, I'm going to get better. But what I want to hear is, where was the evolution, the crossover? Was place
Mhm.
actually functioning when you took that position? Had it already been launched when it was at 1,250 agents? Was that going parallel to that role, or did it happen while you were in that role?
I love that question because for all of our friends listening, because I know
A
a lot
bunch
of
of them, they're going to
people
jump on it.
in your world. Well, what I love about it is that I want you, some of you guys should probably listen to this from Ben's perspective, right? Not my perspective. And here's what it is. Ben had multiple businesses at that time, right? Multiple real estate holdings and businesses at that point. And me taking over brokerages was kind of the last large business that he had not leveraged out. He didn't
Mhm.
really have an operator leveraging it out.
Mhm.
And, I don't want to say it was burdening him because it's a wonderful business. And also, he was in talks with Chris Suarez at that time about merging their expansion team. So at that point, he had about 25, yep, super profitable expansion teams.
See, I don't know this story either, so this is
I'll tell
really.
you, it's really interesting timing because you were inadvertent. You and I were both kind of part of it. You look back on retrospect and you go, "Oh, that was happening," but I don't know that I knew it all at the time either, right? But
Right, right.
Chris had, I think 10 or 15, and these were teams bringing them like they were massively. They were 30 to 40% profit margin teams.
Whew.
So really, what place was John is was Chris and Ben saying, if we combine and we take our back end business services, our lead generation levels, our lead gen modeling, our financial models. Ben's just stellar at running businesses to a P&L with a profit. He's just, I can't think of a better mentor for that. I mean, even with brokerages, I can't express that mentorship and that apprenticeship what it did for me. But all of those things they combined, and that's what formed place. But the timing is it's interesting that I now realize is how much time Ben gave me up front. And this is what I would want everybody to hear and take from this. So much time, you guys. Like he didn't say, Via, I'm going to dump this on you and abandon you. He poured into me, and I now realize how little time he actually had to do that. And I realize it was like the kite stream was so close that he was holding me. I was the kite, and then he would let out some string. If you can visualize it, right? Then he would let a little more and little more. It was a long time before he couldn't see that kite in the sky and let me really run
Mhm.
this multi-million-dollar profit center. We had that profiting 7 figures and higher. So uh what was interesting is that I started September of 2018, and June of 2019 he's talked about this a lot. He went to a meeting in Coeur d'Alene to firm up a business partnership. And instead of turning left to go home to Bellingham, he turned right and ended up going on a 3-month road trip around the country. 4 6 hours of phone time every day while he was driving, podcasts, audiobooks, didn't really have an end goal, ended at Chris Suarez's house in Portland. And they solidified place, and place was launched January, 5 months later, 4 months
When
later.
he was touring, then was he growing his expansion teams? Was that what his initiative was, or did he have the
No,
vision picture of place and that's why he was doing it? What was
that
the whole
was
deal
Ben
about?
taking the first break he had taken his entire professional life in 20 something years of building businesses. That was his first true, I would call that a what do you call it when you get I'm losing the word.
Sabbatical?
Sabbatical.
Okay, cool.
I would say that that was Ben's sabbatical. And
Okay. As close as you
um
can get for Ben, right?
yeah, as close as he's ever gonna get. And what's interesting is that he, I wouldn't say that kite string was so loose at that point that I was in the sky and he couldn't see me, but he was confident that I was transmitting the financials every month at that point. I was starting to spot like errors. I was starting to ask questions about where money was going. Like he had enough confidence that the ship wasn't going to sink if he kind of went and did that for 3 months and he formed place. So I always feel like, my unofficial role in place was removing that last domino for him to free up his mind and his schedule, because then he was off and running. And so place launched, if you can kind of visualize this, January of 2020, which was obviously before COVID. And then, running bricks and mortar and running brokerages during COVID, him and I were joined at the hip, which, that's another conversation, is having alignment of values. You don't know how important it is for your lieutenant at arms to share the same values with you until you go through an
Uh,
epidemic,
uh,
or, shit hits the fan. I mean, like, so thank goodness we were thoroughly aligned during decision making we had to make. And, it was actually a highlight of my career going through
so were you
COVID.
going through, were you at Place at the time
I
during
was
COVID?
definitely running brokerages. I was
Was you were running brokerages
1000%,
still in COVID?
100% all in running brokerages. A place wasn't even a thing. I didn't transition out of brokerages into place until early 2022. Yeah.
What and I like what you said, because that was part of my ulterior motives, if you will, of the value I want to bring. Let's go here real quickly. Let's coach people that are in Ben's position.
hmm
Right?
hmm
What did he? You can mention the things that he gave the latitude, but if you were going out to coach another CEO, and from your position, because I think you'd be the best coach of it, because I don't
hmm
they
hmm
need to hear what you experienced. What did you experience? I love what she pointed out. You guys, you need to hear this. I get the phone call all the time, and probably you do too, Via, because we work in parallel environments, parallel
Yeah,
avatars,
for sure.
leaders. My sales manager sucks. They do. How long have they been there? 90 days. Great. Did you even onboard them and train them and teach them like you would an agent? Well, no. They have a resume. They do their job. No wonder they suck. But talk about, that's just one thing I wanted to point out that I'm sure you hear all the time. Talk about, if you can give to, because I think this is probably a cap to a lot of organizations. What did he do so well specifically
hmm
in building you to a position that I mean, there's not many people that run an organization your size today.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I do talk to CEOs all the time about it because my perspective is unique. One of the things is we have a history together, and I think that so often we want to bring someone from outside, and we want to, 90, it's a great example because that is so typical. You're right. Oh, it's been 90 days, it's been 6 months, even if it's been a year.
You
Ben and
suck.
I'm like, it's been years. Like his patience level, and I in turn now model that, my patience level. I am in relationship with people for years. Veronica and I are now business partners together at Place, but I met Veronica in what, 2012, 2013. That's very typical for me. I'm used to it. The same with Ben. So oftentimes, like I saw someone on your stage at Maverick who this reminded me of, who's running a team. I just am not recalling the name, but I believe he knew the team owner for years and came from a completely different industry and came over to run a team. That I love that, because there's this personal trust relationship that goes, that precedes that. So if it's not somebody on your team, it's not someone you've known for years, I get it. That can't always happen. This takes time, and we have to be impatient on the process, patient on the results.
Really good. Yeah.
Right. So
Really.
I would say that, number one. Number two, you have got to slow down to speed up. And the best analogy I have for that is, uh, someone loses their director of operations or their assistant, depending on their size. their knee-jerk reaction, like it's sort of human nature, is to say, okay, I am now the assistant. I am now the director of operations because I can't let the ship fall. Can't let it sink, I mean. And, really what we should probably be doing is stopping everything we're doing, spending one solid week lead generating to recruit a DOO or recruit an EA to fill in that void, so that then they can come and we can be side by side with them, and we can still maybe be the EA or be the DOO a little bit while they get ramped up. But instead, what we do is we prolong our agony and we jump in and do the role, right? So what Ben realized is that success looks like stairs. It doesn't look like a straight line up, and there is going to be sometimes a flat line, during that time where you're training and you're pouring into that person, and you're really teaching them to think like you think, right? So Ben is really good, and I think this is also good for us leaders to know. He's just good at models and frameworks. That's how I think now. I think in terms of models and frameworks. And so, like when if we're talking about leadership, like right now, I'm going to the leadership pyramid is what I think about. So lead yourself first, then lead others to lead others, and then you attract leaders. So, teach your people your frameworks of thinking. Think about how you can take how you think, and what is your decision matrix? How do you make decisions? What are your rules of engagement for talking with clients? What are your rules? What are your deeply held beliefs? I call them DHBs of leadership, right? Write them down. Start just having a notepad. Don't be arbitrary, like framework who you are and how you think, and teach your people that. So
Yeah.
I would say, all of those things, John, and, we also have to have an immense amount of trust and grace. Surely I did things that Ben could have done better. Surely. And, I failed. I know of some of my fails. There's probably some fails I don't know about.
Do you
I
think
don't
there's
know.
Via, and I don't know, do you think there's any situations where you came forward with, I'm going to take this action step, and this is what we need to do, and Ben in his heart of hearts knew, I know that's not going to work out, didn't say, but he allowed you to go through the experience. Was he willing to take risks in experiences along the way so that you could self-discover and learn, maybe through, even Zoom loved that, it
I
gave
know.
us
He likes it.
but did he, like he knew, I know this probably isn't going to work out, but I've got to let her discover it because I'm in this for the long haul. Did you ever have any of those type of experience where he didn't say, I told you so, or he sat back and said, so what'd you learn? Any of those?
Yeah, well, we have an extraordinarily close relationship, as you can guess. And by the way, side note, be sure you like the person. I mean, like that it sounds dumb and silly, but if you don't like spending time and talking on the phone and meeting with someone, like, let's just start there. They're never going to be your go-to person. They will never be your lieutenant at arms. Like, you have to enjoy being with that person. Now, were you going to irritate each other? Yeah, but that happens. I mean, spouses irritate each other. But in answer to your question, yes. And what I would add to that is he would always still tell me. So the difference is the nature of it would be, I've done that before. I've done it, I've failed every time. It's 3 or 4 times. That said, you do what you think is best. I believe in you. I believe in you to make the right decision. Here's what I would have you consider: A, B, C. So that's what he would do. And and that's another thing. Like, I am so much better, John, after working, directly with Ben. I'm so much better at telling people that I believe in them, because I just wasn't doing it enough. I know now as a leader. And when someone says that to me, it fills me up and it gives me fuel, to continue on and not get defeated. So don't forget to tell your people that you believe in them.
Yes, acknowledging. That's great. So when you jumped into place, what were the first things that you focused on? What were your daily initiatives to support the overall vision? What did that look like?
Well, it's a cool story, and there's so many lessons in all of it. It's a cool story because ladies, I want you to hear this. I decided I wanted to go to Place, and it was looking like the table of leadership was full. That's what it felt like to me, because Place had been happening for a couple of years. A lot of the positions, the typical positions had been filled. There was a head of growth, there was, in my world anyway, right? There's a head, whatever. So I met with Ben and Chris, and I said, for a variety of reasons, I believe it's time for me to come to Place. And they said, great, we'd love to have you. And we need to figure out what your role is going to be. And I said, all right, is it okay if I start talking to people? Can I? And yeah. So I started talking with people, in the executive leadership team. And I created a job description based on what I felt the company needed. And I'm always going to be in growth, that was well suited to my skill set. So I created a slide deck, and I had to, do a dog and pony to Ben and Chris, and actually Chris Stewart, our president. Chris Stewart came to us. He was the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. You talk about recruiting. That guy brought it from 20,000 to, I think, 50,000 agents or something crazy. So I created a deck, and we fleshed out my job description, made up a title, which I still have. It's head of industry, which, like, no one knows what that means, because, like, why would
I
they?
love it. Yeah.
And basically, this was my first 6 months of Place. Figure out who's important and go get them. Okay. I was like, okay. And so, I knew that really what that meant was I had to get out of the ecosystems I was in and very, very much broaden them. And, they gave me an expense account, and I just went on the road. I just did R&D. Like, the only way I can describe it is I was just, who was on stage? What were they saying? Who am I seeing on social media? Who is everybody talking about? I was just getting in relationship. That's the best way I can describe it. I was deciding who was important in every brand, in every circle. You're extraordinarily important. The Cheplak environment is one of the best communities in this space, period, end of story. It's always been important, right? That didn't take me long to figure out, John, but I needed to know where everyone was and who they all were. So I went on the road, and it's funny, I just flew to Mexico. I was like, this gal, Spring Benson's having an event. I think she's important. My gut tells me I'm starting to see her name more, or
I
whatever.
remember seeing you down there, because
Yeah,
I got to know
yeah.
Spring, and Via's down there, and like, well, that's wow, how this all interlocks.
Isn't that
Cool.
wild?
Keep going. That's so cool.
It was like a cold call in person. I just basically said, hi, my name's Via. I'm at your event. That's what, I did that. I still do that. I just showed up in the rooms, and it was never recruiting. It was really relationship building, which I know you and I have in common, that we really believe that it's just coming from value, coming from curiosity,
So
and
smart.
it's, you and I are really similar that way. And
Mm,
not even knowing what the outcome's going to be. Yeah, just attaching to the process, really, right?
mm, mm,
And then we solidified the role more. So then I'm really in charge of kind of what we would call our icon or influencer strategy. So that taking the Veronicas and the Springs and working with them, and also do all of our outbound events. So anything that has to do with growth events, either us producing and having, or us attending, that's all me. That's what I do at Place. And then I
Well, I
recruit,
think
I
a
work.
place too, I see, and Ben, if you're watching this, you can get mad at me, but it means you're just doing a good job. But I see you as that face of place, if you will, that person that's out front. And maybe and I don't know that it's because we have a relationship, but I think you've done such a great job of representing the brand. I think a place, think of Via. So, I mean,
Thank you.
that's a hats off to all of you, to Chris and Ben, and you. So
Thank
um,
you.
that's what I
Yeah,
see.
evangelism's always going to be part of it, but
But
really,
with
it's so funny.
results, though, too. That's the
Yeah.
interesting thing people need to hear. And I want you guys to really hear, because I've got to take this teaching moment here, because many people get approached and they want to do things. But here's what Via didn't do. Via's already been on the biggest stages at this point in her career throughout the industry. She's influencer. Let me give you my influencer with impact, not an influencer standing in front of Porsches and private jets. She's already
Yeah.
proven that, but I want you guys to hear what she did for those that are coming up, because that's the one big thing that we both love doing is our responsibility is to give back. She didn't say, "Oh, hey, Spring, can you have me speak down at your thing? I'm Via." And Via's got that authority and credibility where she could. No, she said, "I'm going to go in there with curiosity and white belt mentality, but actually advanced skills of, you know what, I'm going to participate first." So I just wanted everyone to hear that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
for
just so
sure.
important. They miss it. They
I
miss
think that like we feel so like you have to have metrics behind it, and you have to have these have to be result driven. Otherwise, the stage stuff is all ego. That's all it is. I mean, that's not, it's just not good enough, right? Are we moving the right needle the right way?
it. Mhm.
And being on stage, communication skills actually, John. I mean, we're doing this podcast together, and
Mhm.
you and I are on stages a lot, and it's one of the most phenomenal soft skills any of us can have. Communication
Hands
skills. You want
down.
to hear? You want to hear a story? You want to hear an interesting story
Yes, I
about that?
do. Yes.
So I start the job at brokerages, and first 6 weeks, Ben was, going off hunting or something. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go meet with, we had like 40 at that time, maybe it was 30 staff. So like, I'm going to meet with almost everybody. That's all I'm going to do my first month, 6 weeks. And I'm going to do half day offsites with each of the office managers. Each kind of position got different times. Right. And I'm going to come back, and we had set sort of 3 directives. Like, this is what we think I'm going to work on, and this is how we're going to, but I want to make sure that this isn't just, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to meet with everybody to determine what the priorities are going to be.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then we blocked 2 hours together, which is a lot. That's a lot of time for Ben. I drove up to 90 minutes to Bellingham, and I was super excited after 6 weeks in this new role. Like, I was going to get 2 hours with Ben, and we're going to, have that war room. We're going to map out. It's going to be fun. That's fun. Right. So I get up there, and we're in the conference room, and I'm like, I'm so excited. We're going to do this, and we're going to map it out. And Ben's like, yeah, me too. No, I'm kidding. He doesn't do that. He's like, that was a joke. He's like, yeah, me too. And he goes, but first, I have a present for you. And I was like, okay. And he does stuff like that. So he goes back to his office. And what you need to know about that time is it was a new role, had a lot to prove. And I'm not exaggerating because I have looked back at my calendar. I think I was working 15 hours a day. And that's a lot. Like, you can say that lightly, but I legit was working 60 to 80 out pure work. I had so much to catch up on. I was tired. I was a little stressed. I was trying to apply to college applications for my oldest son. It was a little bit of a stressful time. And he comes back, and I kid you not, he's got a stack of books, like 5 books, and he plops them down. And I'm like, all I could think of was like, holy shit, I cannot read right now. Like, I do not have time to read. Now he wants me to read 5 books. And like, I'm starting to have this inner panic, like, fuck, like, what am I? So I take the books. So I thank him. I take the books. I kid you not. I set them on a chair under the conference table so I don't have to look at them. I couldn't even look at them. So I get home that night, after this great meeting. I plop all my crap, on the counter, and there's a stack of books. And I sit down, my husband and kids, and we're eating. My husband goes, you got a lot of books today. And I'm like, oh, Ben got those for me. And I'm like eating, and he's like, that's funny. I was like, what do you mean that's funny? He's like, that he got you all those books. And I realized I hadn't looked at what they were. I just hadn't looked at them. You want to know what they were? Let's see if I remember. First one was how to say what you want to say in 30 seconds or less. The second one was the articulate executive. The third one was communication for executives or something. The fourth one was simply said, to this day, one of the best books on communication I've ever read. The fifth one was like how to say what you want to say. All 5 books were on communication.
Wow.
So I texted him, and I'm like, passive aggressive leadership, huh? Like, anything you want to talk about? Like, should I be worried? Like, anything I need to know? And I should have saved his text back to me. His text back to me he said, Via, he was very complimentary. You're like an 8 to 10 out of 10 on most things. you become a 10 out of 10 on this, and you're gonna no, you're gonna be unstoppable. This is your last. You should focus completely now on your communication skills and honing those in. And I, to this day, it became my primary topic of study. I went on to have, I forgot about it until later, but I was on an award-winning podcast that had like 600,000 downloads in 18 months. We got MM Podcast of the Year. I realized how much communication had changed my life after really focusing on it.
Yeah. So good. So,
Yeah.
so
Funny
uh,
story, huh?
it's a good one though. It's interesting because did you see Brandon speak at Maverick?
Oh, he's so good. Yeah.
Listen, and you heard the story, the story he told about the first time he got on stage. So it's so beautiful too, because I've seen you over the years too, and it's like you can see the people that really do the work. I mean, you see, you took a subject on stage, numbers wise, and
Yeah. Tough
as
one.
a sport, yeah, but you absolutely nailed it. I mean, communication
Thank you.
is
Yeah.
everything. Um, so let me ask you this in kind of a behind the curtain. I mean, I could sit here for hours and go with you. Behind the curtain, what as you're looking at teams right now, who is your primary? So anyone who's watching this, as far as place is concerned, is there a primary avatar that you're finding? Certainly, you have your ambassador type, your mega teams,
Mhm.
the Springs and the Veronicas, and I'm sure there's a few others. But is there a specific avatar that you guys really
Mhm.
focus on, and you are really the bridge for that you found over the years with Place?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there is. The larger teams, the reasons for a Spring and a Veronica, Eric Hatch,
Yeah,
Joe
Eric.
Taylor group, Kevin Kaufman, Fred Weaver, those guys. The reason for them coming is now they want to get more into verticals, like mortgage, title, insurance. They want to regionally or nationally expand. They might have big rev share organizations, and they are really looking for us to help really truly kind of help them get their team pretty out of their team from a day-to-day basis, and or their stock plays, they want to get in business with us. So that's different. The
Sure.
average team, the prototype, if you will, that comes to us is in the messy middle. And what I mean by the messy middle is and you know this firsthand, um, they are producing, they are recruiting, and then the thing that kills them, the nail in the coffin, is they are trying to launch and keep these agents productive. So we call that agent productivity systems. Doing all three of those at the same time, by the way, is unavoidable in anybody's growth, but some people can sail past that really fast, and some people can stay there and never leave it, right, for years. And so whether teams come to us that are just entering that, they're in it, or maybe they're on their way out of it, wherever that parabolic curve falls,
Mhm.
that's where we come in. We're really what I call growth accelerators. So I think of us a little bit like putting gasoline on the fire. They're going to do it anyway. Anybody who's partnered with Place John can do this on their own. They've proven that already. This is just farther, faster, and speed matters, because if you want to go farther, if you go faster, you will go farther. So we just help remove all of the obstacles that occur in that period of growth, because what's important is that they have to constantly be recruiting and growing. So the first thing I look for is an appetite for growth. If someone has a lifestyle business, and that's why what you guys are doing with Reside and in your rooms, and what we're doing is identical. That
Mhm.
you're not in these rooms unless you have an appetite for growth. Period.
Sure, sure.
Nothing wrong with a wonderful lifestyle business. I love it. There's a lot of people that just don't want to grow. That's phenomenal. And I don't think they're probably our best match. We exist to be an accelerator for growth, and to work with teams who want to grow. And so the first thing I'm assessing, no matter where a team is in their iteration, is what their appetite for growth is, what their track record is.
Mhm.
You have to have at least a $500,000 GCI or 50 units to qualify, but it's
Mhm.
more than that. You also need to have one or two agents and a full-time admin.
Mhm.
Um, so that's at the minimum. Our average teams in the low million, right around 1 million.
Yeah.
It used to be like a little higher, but with the market shift, it's closer to 1 million now, in GCI. So they're right in that messy middle where profitability is usually, if they want to transition out from being in personal production into team business income, we help them. A big part of what we do is help transition so that their income is staying steady while they're replacing personal income with business income.
Really good.
That's a lot of what my consulting ends up being on with teams of that size.
Because it's, we all have people we coach and we work with. If you're looking at, and everyone goes through seasons, right? If you're identifying right now and you're looking at this big body of organizations that you're leading out in this community of place, because there's community to it too. I mean, they're paying for, just my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, they're paying for, people say proximity, but I'd say they're paying for your intellectual asset. They're paying for Ben's amazing
Mm-hmm.
intellectual asset. That true definition of proximity. What's the difference between right now if you're sitting down with, say there's a team at place that's just not going, at the pace that they want to, and the one that really is? What do you see right
Mm-hmm.
now is the differentiator between those that are productive and those aren't, or those who aren't where they want to be?
Well, it's a great question because I talk about this all the time. Everybody has different motivations, different skill sets, different drives, different seasons in life, different external events happening. And you can give everybody the same coaching, the same playbook, if you look at what you do, and you will not get equal results. You just
No.
won't, right? And that is to be expected in any organization. In any organization, you're going to have the gamut of high level succeeders, median, mid level, and underachievers. I mean, that's just part of it. And I can't always speak to what somebody's life is, what's happening in their life, and why they're not committing, if it's fear, if it's a personal ceiling, if it's external events. But in general, there's 4 or 5 there's 4 or 5 reasons someone come to us. They want to grow and they want their income to turn from personal production into business income. There's some kind of an exit strategy. It could be in a couple of years, it could be in 5 or 10, but they don't see what that is. 3, they want to exit more of the day-to-day while still being part of it, because they want to start adding different businesses, mortgage, title, escrow, speaking, I'm thinking of Brandon, property management,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And, kind of like Ben did with me with brokerages, 4, they want, more opportunity for their agents that maybe they can provide. I mean, it's incredible that the suite of value we can
All the
provide
tools the agents
agents.
have
Yeah.
available. Yeah.
Health insurance and, stock purchase and
I
all
mean,
of that. So
you're saving these people 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or you may be
we
saving
are,
a lifetime, because many of them will just hit that thing and say, I'm just not going to go there. I'm going to go back to that lifestyle person.
yeah.
You're not only that bridge, but you're an inspiration, and you create a borrowed belief, and it's like it plugs in. So really, really good. Yeah, and I know too, people say, can I've seen what people are doing working with you. And I say, I can't guarantee it.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, I'm a facilitator, right? I mean, here's the good news. There's proven let me show you, but I don't know you. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not like, woo, the Ben, Kitty, and Via magic pixie dust. I mean, it doesn't work
It
that
just
way.
doesn't happen. And it's interesting, John, because I think about it when we are recruiting agents to our teams, and then you and I
Outright.
are talking to team operators, right? Both ways, we're all looking for people that are willing to follow models and systems. That's what we're all looking for. You're looking for agents that can follow your models and systems on your team. We're looking for operators who can follow models and systems. It's their team. Ultimately, they're going to have their own nuances. They're going to make their own decisions. They have autonomy. But we have proven models and systems for those who want to lean in, and some will, some won't. I can't predict.
We can't. Let's do this. I so appreciate your time. There's an element of this that we've talked about, and it's something that I don't just talk about. I do my very, very best because I'm a product of this. It's very important to me. women in leadership.
Mm.
And I think it's interesting. We don't say men, and I'm just going to make my stand on it. We don't have to say men in leadership, but we have to say women. It's like this, and it shouldn't be that way. And here's the good news. It's people like you, your friends in Spring and Lori Reeder
Mhm.
and Veronica Figueroa and so many others, not to leave any women out. You are that borrowed belief. You are that inspiration. You are that gateway. What would you say to a woman in leadership who, whether she's seen you and watched you and not even said anything to you about it, or has said nothing to no one, but has that thing in their heart and in their head that you had that said, "I'm going to rise up." What would you say to inspire? Because you can't motivate them. That's a choice. But what would you say to inspire? Because our business, you look at you women in leadership. I mean, you look at the Spring and Veronica. Let's take those two. Deborah Beagle. My goodness. I
Deborah
mean,
Beagle, amazing. Yeah.
Deborah's running
Lori
the number
Reeder,
one team in the
amazing. They're all
world.
amazing.
Laura Reeder's closed 900 million. Veronica
Amazing.
closed 2,000 transactions. Spring is growing and they're running downlines. And I know there's a whole bunch of other women out there that need to step, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's more that need to step through a doorway because they've got the capability. They just need that
Mhm.
to step through. What would you say to a woman that has an aspiration of leadership or is questioning herself in leadership or wants to go to the next level from where she's at, Via?
I'm so grateful that you asked this question and gave me this opportunity to answer it. So thank you. Because ladies, this is what I know. After running brokerages and having, wonderful men and women, reporting into me, let me tell you something. Men raise their hands without even thinking, and you don't. You are not raising your hand. And I'm guilty as charged. I kind of alluded to it, but I'll tell you something, John. I was meeting with Ben weekly at the lead up to us kind of coming together on me taking over brokerages. And this is back in 2018. And I remember at the very beginning of that, and I had this stirring inside of me at the very beginning of that. He said, Via, describe to me who you think I should find to lead brokerages. And at the very beginning, I had no concept it was me. A very well-known branch manager had been let go from a Coldwell banker, I think it was, in my area. And I said, and I start describing her in my head. She needs to be, plugged in, local, someone that the agents respect. Like I start, listing everything. And we end the meeting and I drive back to my office. And what I remember is I had a meeting upstairs and I pull into the dark under office garage, right? So it's dark under there. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me. I mean, I just described myself. And I kid you not, I've hardly told anyone the story. I kid you not.
Yes.
I start texting Ben, John. I go, okay, I think that could be me. Like, I think maybe could we talk about leadership for me? Could I maybe be that person? Do you know, I'm telling you, I sat in my dark car and they're texting me from upstairs. They're like, where are you? We're late for our meeting. 45 minutes it took me to press send
Um, mm,
because I was like, well, if he says no and rejects me, I don't think I can handle it. I got to leave. I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to, I just, and I 45 minutes to press send on that because of fear of rejection, embarrassment, feeling I wasn't worthy enough, who knows? And so ladies, what I know is that if you're not comfortable raising your hand, figure out some scripts like, hey, so and so, can you show me a path to get you?
mm,
Or,
mm,
Via or Spring or Veronica or Lori or Deborah, do you have time to have a phone conversation and
mm.
help, talk me through, some barriers I'm facing and come to She Inc. That's She Inc. is actually, this is a community
Tell
that,
us about that, where they
yeah,
can find that. I want you to lay
yeah.
that out there. Okay.
We literally just sent all of our ladies the new Jamie Kern Lima book called Worthy, which is,
Mm,
probably relevant to this. But, She Inc. is a women community where we, this is what we work on. This is the kind of women we're with. We wealth and health and business and, finding your platform, all of this stuff, right? We meet 4 times a year in person. We have every other weekly Zooms. It's phenomenal. I actually have event coming up in Scottsdale, but it's sheinc.co. You can get more
Okay.
information on there. But
She-ink.co. Okay.
that's why women need community. And that's why, you know, we don't know, there's some, I'm really happy to see men's groups emerging more and more. I love it. And women need, we have different challenges and probably different obstacles and different mental ceilings. And it's unique, you know, and we have, you know, we're biologically, we have children, like there are things, you know, that are just different. And so, I think it's important that, you know, we choose our mentors, that we reach out to them and get help if we feel like we're blocking ourselves in some ways, because the men are asking, and I say that in awe. I don't say that derogatorily. Like, I am inspired by the men who reported up to me, who were in my face all the time. I loved it. I loved it.
Because
Like the
you're okay
guys
in
are,
your skin.
I love it.
You're okay in your skin,
I
right?
like
People
you.
go,
They
"How
were the
did you
ones that would
leader?"
say, yeah, B, I want your job. How do I get your job? I love it. Who doesn't love that? I love it. And the women didn't do it. One or two would, but it would be very unusual. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, and let me point something out. You know, we just listed, you know, you look at Via's position, which she has just climbed and climbed and earned and delivered results. Spring, who I mentioned. So I want people to hear this. So Via, and it's kind of a rhetorical question here. Via, Spring, Deborah Beagle, Veronica Figueroa, Lori Reeder, that group. So there's just some, and I'm leaving
wow.
so many out. But let me tell you something right now, ladies. I don't know that there is a phone call that could be more important to a Via, to a Deborah, to a Veronica, Lori Spring than, hi, I look up to you. I want to be in leadership. You give, just come with humility. And let me tell you something. There is nothing more, because here's what I want to share with you, ladies, is because their responsibility as women right now is to keep what they have, to continue to grow. They must give it away. And they know this. And I know each and every one of them for years. And so, but they can't do it unless you raise your hand and you ask, and you have that humility and that vulnerability and that transparency, because that's their responsibility. Via talked about the evolution of leaders. Now, you know, she's developing leaders. Well, here she is in her very, very valuable time that she has, and not consciously, unconsciously, there's hopefully an experience that a woman has that then attracts women leaders, whether they choose to work with her or they choose to be inspired by her. So I just want to really, really encourage all the women out there. Why it's close to my heart is my mom worked 3 jobs downtown Seattle, the Naval Shipyard. She'd go across
Wow.
the ferry there,
Bremerton.
Bremerton, and then she would go over to the Harbor Lights, a little bar on the water in Tacoma, Washington, and
Wow.
cocktail Friday and Saturdays. And she woke up one day, burned the boats after her father passed away at 4 and 5 years old, and said, "I'm going to sell real estate."
I love that.
And I'm a product of it. So, ladies, you just have to absolutely come forward. But here's what it requires. I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong. I never want to say any man that says I understand. Well, no, I don't. I don't understand, because I think it's irresponsible. But I observe. It's interesting that I talk to you and I hear my wife too, who I just think is just amazing and a powerhouse. And yet I hear
Yes.
the things that she walks through too, and I'm like, no way. You know, you start to hear those things. So where can people find you? Sheinc.co for that event.
Yep.
What's the best place for people to find you, Via?
You know, viaplace.com. My name is spelled really weird. It's Vija.
Do
I'm
you know,
on,
Via, as long as we've known each other, I still can't remember what's going, is it Viija? Because it's
it's
so
because my social media
different.
is Via
So
Via.
yeah, it's so different. Then I think, well, I need to make it more complicated then than it
I
really
know.
is.
So
So
my Instagram is Vija, you know, but it's, my name is spelled Vija, but it's pronounced Via, just like, you know, via satellite or
at
something.
place.com.
Yeah, via@place.com or via on Instagram, you know, wherever. I'm good with DMs. I'll see
Cool.
it.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Via.
I appreciate you. Thank you really for having me on. It means a lot, John. It's like a full circle moment, actually. So
Pretty cool. All righty.
pretty
Thanks.
cool.